This episode of the Beef Market Update is brought to you by SmartLick. When the weather turns cold and forages fade, FlaxLick tubs deliver omega-3s that help cows hold condition and support pregnancy through winter. Weatherproof and self-fed, it's nutrition that works while you focus on everything else. Visit smartlick.com to learn more.
Let's talk what's going on in the cattle markets. Here for the Beef Market Update is Ann Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange. Ann, how are we doing today?
Well, I'm fine. I hear you getting a little bit of snow in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I'm up in Red Deer here today for Agri-Trade, and definitely there is some snow flying. Winter is old man Winter is he's entering. He's
Yes,
entering the playing surface here now. So it's I guess it had to come eventually. Had to come
yes,
eventually.
exactly.
Okay, let's talk about what
Mm.
Lindsay hosted the show 2 weeks ago when we did our last beef market update. What a ride the last 2 weeks have been for the cattle markets. I guess what is going on? We had the president make some comments about potentially, beef prices were too high, need to kind of fix that. The market responded with some pretty risk-off selling. Where do we sit here today? What's going on?
Well, yeah, let's dial it back a little bit. If you go back to just before Lindsay and I talked 2 weeks ago, so on October 14th, futures markets made their highs, both live cattle and feeder cattle. Cash cattle prices were coming along. As we know in the country, feeder cattle and calf prices were extremely strong. And just to make a note before I forget, that's kind of when they all topped in terms of those feeder cattle and calf prices. But with the comments, and it wasn't just the one thing, but the comment as you referred to in terms of beef prices are too high from the president's mouth. And then, of course, the talk about expanding Argentinian beef imports, the TRQ or the tariff rate quota for potentially 4 times more. And again, this is just talk from the administration. And then some speculation, and we've had this on and off since the border was closed back in July, but on and off speculation of the Mexican border reopening. And so that reared its ugly head the week after that. So all of these are coming within days. And then the Brazilian government talking about getting a U.S. deal done and reducing their tariff rate, meaning more beef from Brazil into the U.S. And again, these were all just talking points. There was no, announcements, but that's kind of all the market needed when you had that much air under it, that those kind of 4 specific issues or topics were able to send the money to the sidelines. The money was worried anyways. So it went running and the futures go into a tailspin. So in a nutshell, just looking at December live cattle, it's down $30 a hundred US from that peak in mid-October, and feeder cattle are down over $60 US a hundred from that peak.
So here's the question: Is this a market correction where we go up from here because the fundamentals have really not changed, or is this a leaky balloon that we just sort of drift lower here because of all the uncertainty that the White House has created on the markets?
Well, I think now, Shaun, you're right. The fundamentals haven't changed. The supply is still the same. For what we know on demand, we've got a government shutdown on right now, so we don't have all the normal reports we do to tell us what's going on with demand. From what we can tell, it's still good. It's been exceptional in 2025, the best year ever. So those pieces still are intact. But these things that the market is worried about, depending on how they play out, they could in fact, keep this market maybe not here, but certainly not going back to where we came from. So a lot depends on, of course, don't forget this Mexican feeder supply thing is a big deal.
Yeah.
We're talking about 1 million or over 1 million head of potential. So if that comes to fruition sooner rather than later, the market's got to figure that out. That does become a supply implication, right? And same with the Argentinian beef imports. It's probably not a big amount, but some. And the Brazil, so all of these pieces do equal into supply at some point, potentially. The biggest one being the Mexican feeder cattle. So, and do consumers, the economies, we're getting news from on the economic side that things are a little shakier. So is it enough news for the consumer to, well, the president says beef prices are too high. Maybe they are too high, So yeah, we don't know the answers to those questions, but I think it would take a lot to get the train back on the tracks.
Well, I don't like that. I do like the fact that you're recording here just after the open
And
on
it's up.
Friday, and the markets
Yeah,
are strong here today,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But based on the volatility we've seen, who knows how we end the day or where we open on Monday, right? That's the challenge here right now.
Yeah, and volatility, that's the key word here. So, I mean, we've built this bull market over months and we take the air out in days. But the most of this down came in 10 days, 10 trading days. So, just crazy. Now, what goes up must come down. We understand that.
Yeah.
But, it has, and markets do tend to come off faster than they go up. Those are all things we know, but, yeah. How do you figure from here? The impact is for sure. We've seen cash cattle holding together. So on that note, Shaun, Texas, Kansas today down about $2-3 from last week, so 232. Northern trade was actually steady at 230, so not a big difference there. And then here in Alberta, market 493 to 495 delivered dressed. So that's off a little bit from last week, but the spot cash cattle in terms of the fat cattle are kind of holding together. But where we see more and more of the decline, excuse me, is in the feeder cattle market, because those cattle are for this 2026 market that has got so much uncertainty around it because of what's just happened.
Yeah, and because of the uncertainty, it's going to be really fascinating to see kind of where these prices go in the, between now and the end of the year, I guess. So let's just use that kind of 2 month time frame. Are we more likely, and you don't need to answer this, but are we more likely to be at that 250 on the December future, or are we more likely to be at the 200? That's what a lot of, because at one time, 200, you couldn't imagine live cattle being through 200.
Right.
And I think for a lot of producers, those are the questions that they're having to deal with from a risk management standpoint in trying to manage their inventory, manage their sales, manage their procurement, depending on where you are in the value chain. It's just a heightened level of uncertainty that really means you got to step up that risk management plan.
Yeah, lots of volatility and uncertainty on the table for sure. And some of these things will come. We'll find out more news as we go forward. So, for example, on the demand side, if I got a second to just talk about the retail side. So we did get, and this is going to be a key piece in 2026. What does demand for beef look like? We came through this phenomenal year this year. What does it look like next year? We kind of know supplies. They're going to be tighter next year. What happens on the demand side? So retail beef prices from StatsCan came out for September this week. They were basically the same as where they've been for July, August, so now 3 months in a row. Yes, they're at record or near record levels, but they haven't climbed higher. So is that a signal? They're 4% higher than last year at this time. Pork is up 8% from this time last year, and chicken's up 10%. So, again, all the proteins have moved higher for sure. Well, all food products have moved higher. And now we kind of sit at this level. So are we at that point where consumers have said, okay, these are high enough prices, but they went along with some pretty good cattle prices as well. So now the market needs to settle those things out as we go into next year, see how consumers are feeling, look at jobs data, look at what's going on with inflation, interest rates, all those things.
Yeah. Because the consumer, we know this, the consumer through these higher prices has really stepped up. They've shown, the proof is in the pudding, they have a taste for beef. And whether it's the how many people are using GLP-1 blockers like the Ozempics of the world, which is increasing people's taste for red meat proteins and things like that. There's a lot happening in this dynamic market, and beef demand has been one of the positives for sure.
Absolutely.
If you would have, if 5 years ago we're having this conversation, which we were, and you said, okay, we're going to have prices at these levels and demand's still going to be going strong, we're both like, no, I'm taking the under on that one, and it's
yeah, Shaun, you don't even have to go back a few years ago. In 2024, we said, it's going to be hard to hold beef demand together like we saw in 24 and in 25. And it blew it out of the window. Yeah. So, again, it has been substantially stronger than anybody thought. So that's been a huge plus for beef prices. No matter with all this outside noise, that's a true thing.
Fascinating stuff. I'm curious to see what the next steps are. Is there actually implementation of some of these steps that are being discussed, or is it talk and not the act?
My understanding, Shaun, right now, these are talks. Could they move into something, but we just haven't seen the ink dry on anything? They're talks.
Yeah. Great stuff. Hey, Ann, thanks a lot for joining us here today on the Beef Market Update. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Shaun. You too. Bye.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the Beef Market Update, brought to you by SmartLick. Flax-Lick tubs deliver omega-3s for winter conditioning, supporting pregnancy and calf development, so your herd performs and you rest easier. SmartLick, premium, weatherproof, self-fed nutrition that pays you back. Learn more at smartlick.com.